Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Sinclair. With me is Augusta McDonnell. She is not only the anchor that you see at 6 o'clock, but also part of our investigative team. And tonight we are beginning a three-part series called 23 Days. It is about the 23 days that ICE detainees were at the Anchorage Correctional Complex. So, Augusta, you've been working on this for a bit. When did you first start working on this story?
Yeah, Tracy, thanks so much. So we first started hearing about potential issues coming from the Anchorage Correctional Complex having to do with this population within about a week of their arrival. So 41 detainees from the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, Washington were transferred due to overflow issues, we're told by the Department of Corrections in Tacoma, to the Anchorage Correctional Center or Complex for a temporary hold. And shortly after they arrived, the detainees' attorneys and advocate groups started speaking out, hearing complaints from within the complex about what the detainees were experiencing. So it was within a couple weeks of their arrival that the chair of the State House Judiciary Committee called for a fact-finding hearing to have the DOC Commissioner, Jen Winkleman, take some questions about what was going on inside the jail and how this all came about, why ICE, for the first time from what we're hearing from multiple sources, was housing detainees from the lower 48 for a longer-term hold than what they'd typically done for state-run facilities in Alaska. So let's hear from House Judiciary Chair, Democrat from Anchorage, Andrew Gray, about why he called the hearing and what he learned.
I think if you go back and watch the hearing, you'll hear that they were treating this particular population of folks exactly the way they would treat any other population of folks in prison, which would be the incarcerated criminal population that they're used to handling. And as I just said a moment ago, these are not convicted criminals. These are civil detainees. This is a civil infraction. This is an administrative hold. They should not be treated as convicted criminals because they're not.
And so, okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, and what he was saying, that's kind of the main point of tension in what I discovered throughout this reporting process is the difference between how civil detainees and criminal detainees are treated within our judicial system.
And so, who decides how they're treated? I guess why this situation sounds unique. What was it going on?
Sure. So there's two different sets of guidelines at play here. The Department of Homeland Security, which is the body that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, falls under, typically requires non-designated ICE facilities, which are facilities that maybe they have a federal contract with a group like GEO Group, which runs the Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma, to basically tell them how to treat these federal detainees in their care. So that's the standard that Representative Gray questioned Commissioner Winkleman about. Assuming that because these are civil immigration holds, even if there is an issue with their immigration status, that doesn't mean they're breaking the law or are convicted of a crime, and so it's not a criminal process. And so basically, Commissioner Winkleman said they were operating under a Department of Justice contract. Two different bodies. The Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice are two different federal bodies. They were operating under a Department of Justice U.S. Marshal Service contract. So, and that's been a long-standing contract because the federal law enforcement does arrest people in Alaska,
right,
and then they pay local facilities something every day per person to stay in these state-run facilities, and that's how the state of Alaska is compensated for holding these federal detainees. And so, what the ACLU of Alaska told me that the contract that was used to authorize this, to get the state compensated for this federal hold, is kind of a workaround. It's an interagency government contract. The U.S. Marshal Service has had this contract with the Department of Corrections since, I believe, 2013, 2014, and but this is the first time, from what a few different immigration attorneys have told me in town, that including Margaret Stock, she's with Cascadia Interstate Law Group, I believe, and then the ACLU of Alaska's immigration attorneys as well, are saying this is the first time that the jail has housed a long-term hold, which means those individuals, in order to protect their due process rights, would would need to have certain things made available to them, like a law library, translation. They're not supposed to be in punitive conditions per the terms of the ICE standard, but these individuals were being held under a U.S. Marshals Service standard, which is for criminal inmates, which these individuals are not. So that's the tension.
Right.
For the majority of the story, and how these individuals were treated for 23 days, what the accusations are that were problematic, and the difference in the experience they had in the Anchorage Correctional Complex compared to other ICE detention facilities across the country that follow the ICE standards.
Okay. So did you talk to any of the people? I know we're hearing stories, but did you talk to anybody that was actually in one of the detainees?
Yes, and I'm really excited to share the story tonight of one of the detainees. His name is Albert Komatov. Here's an image of him now. He entered the United States in May of 2024. He had an appointment with Customs and Border Protection. He entered the United States legally. He's a Russian immigrant and was seeking protections from oppression in Russia. And he was a part of this group of 41 that spent some time in the Anchorage jail. He was granted asylum shortly after being transferred back to Tacoma, and that's why we were able to interview him on camera. But here is a sneak peek of tonight's story.
In our home country, Russia, homosexuality is effectively criminalized, and Albert is gay, and this was the reason for him to apply for political asylum.
So I heard part of your conversation. It's an extensive conversation, and it was a little bit complicated because you also had to speak through a translator.
Yes. So Evgenia Polikarvova, I probably messed that up, but she is a Russian translator with Russian Seattle for Justice, which is one of the advocacy groups that was, calling for the jail and Alaska state representatives to respond to the issues that they were hearing from Albert coming from within the jail. And so part of this, a lot of that interview was in Russian, but she was great about translating for us so we could capture his story.
And as you're going through this, I know as we said, it's been a pretty long process that you've been working on this. Did you discover anything that surprised you or shocked you that you kind of weren't expecting going in?
Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting that there is a national effort by the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security to increase the number of arrests by immigrations and customs enforcement. And the way that national issue ended up playing out in Alaska is unique. And so what really came out of this story, this process of reporting is, what is this increased effort toward locating people who might have an issue with their immigration case, or and changes in what seem to be changes in due process for immigrants in the United States. There's Supreme Court challenges right now to the 55th Amendment protections to due process for immigrants. How are all of these big national conversations playing out here? And I just thought it was interesting. Alaska is unique, and it's not the same immigration question as for like a border state like Texas. They're touching on this expansive issue in very different ways. So I found that very interesting, and I was in the conversations with the detainees themselves. I interacted with a couple different detainees in this process. Were very illuminating.
I just personally was shocked that we had ICE detainees up here. When you first told me that you were doing the story and that was what this was about, I was shocked because we seem so out of the way, and like you're in Tacoma, you don't have anything closer besides Alaska to send the people to. And again, they ended up in the Anchorage Correctional Complex instead of your traditional ICE facility.
Right, and that was interesting, and ICE hasn't responded to any requests for comment or questions about that decision. At the time that Tacoma was trying to figure out its overflow issues, they also sent groups of overflow detainees to California and Hawaii. So
Hawaii, wow.
So, but both of those were federal facilities or detention facilities that had a federal contract to house ICE detainees. So the Anchorage jail really was this was kind of a standout conversation. It was just different. It's using a contract that, from my understanding at this point, hasn't historically been used to hold long-term ICE detainees. Long-term meaning more than a few days. So people are being arrested by ICE locally. And our third story on Thursday is going to touch on that. We finally have some data from a UC Berkeley data project that has the number of arrests, who was deported, where they were sent, if they were sent to their country of origin. We're seeing some of that for the first time, and so we'll break down that data for you on Thursday. But ICE has arrested twice as many people just in the first half of this year as they did in all of 2024. It's really popped out of that data. So we're going to hit on contemporary ICE arrests as well, which do look a little different than, say, a border state like Texas.
Okay, I'm fascinated. So tonight it starts 6 o'clock is during the 6 o'clock newscast. It will debut. That is, of course, our statewide newscast. So everybody should tune in and check this out. There will be a section tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday. So we've got 3 parts. Of course, they will be up on the web after that. But really interesting. I can't wait to see this. And I hope you will all join us tonight at 6 o'clock for the final story that comes out.
All right, Tracy, thanks so much.
Thanks.